obviously we're here talking about the downtown fire that happened a week and a half ago, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. 2 weeks today.
2 weeks today, geez.
Yeah.
It's pretty busy. When you first got notified of the fire and you were going down, what was going through your mind?
So when I first was notified of the fire, it came in as a fire in one of the downtown buildings on Peter Street. So for me, we know that the buildings are very old down there, and they're attached, and there's lots of places if that fire does grow for that fire to go. So all those things play through your mind as to kind of the tactics you would use on scene.
Upon arrival and obviously seeing the intensity of the fire, at what point did you realize that the Orillia Fire Department, who was first on scene, could not fight it alone and you had to call in outside resources?
So when the call first came in, I was still at home and I was getting ready to come into work, so it was about 20 after 7 in the morning. And so I responded from my home, and then I heard an update on the radio from the captain on the first truck responding that they could see smoke after they pulled out of the fire station. And then the communicator updated with she was getting multiple phone calls. So I got on the radio immediately and asked for RAMA to respond with their aerial. Because if the fire grew, we were going to need more than our aerial truck there to help. So
obviously, the cold temperatures, we've all seen that photo of the fire truck that was fully ice, and same with that Ford pickup truck.
Right.
On top of the cold, what other challenges did you guys face in terms of the fire, in terms of everything going on?
Mm-hmm. So the cold and the wind chill obviously were the most, from an environmental standpoint, the biggest challenges for us. So if you look at it from environmental conditions, then yeah, that for sure. And then from the building would be the size of the building to begin with. It's a 2-story building, but it has a full attic, so it was a very tall building, almost like a 3-story building. And the length of it was almost half of the block on Peter Street. So between the age of the building, built in the late 1800s, so that type of construction that they used back then, plus the size of the building, you have to take all that into consideration, and hampers firefighting efforts for sure.
What challenges do fires in those type of buildings face versus fighting those fires compared to fire buildings of today?
Mm-hmm. So in the older buildings, just the type of construction, so a lot of big, heavy wood to deal with, and there's different types of construction where it's almost like a platform construction and then bloom frame construction, so there's lots of empty voids. And in those old buildings, they would fire cut the floors, so the floors in a fire would collapse before it took the walls down. So when fire gets into the attic, that floor of the attic or the ceiling of the second floor becomes compromised pretty quickly, because those fire cuts will burn away faster, and then the floor will collapse down, and then the same as the first floor into the onto the main level. So you have to take into that account. And then the exterior walls, as we saw, aren't really supported anymore once the roof starts to burn away, and then those floors start to burn away as well. There's nothing holding those exterior walls any longer. So now we have that collapse potential of the exterior walls that we have to take into account on the exterior as well.
Were you guys worried that was going to happen given the structure of the building and obviously the age? Right.
Yes, we knew that from once the fire got up into the attic and through the roof, there wasn't a lot supporting those exterior walls. So then it becomes a defensive fire attack. So we pull the firefighters out of the building, and we allow for a collapse zone around the building, and then our firefighters stay back that distance and put water in from the outside.
With how long the fire was, how intense was it? What tactics were used to fight the fire, but what tactics changed also because of the length of the fire?
Mm-hmm. So once it becomes defensive and we pull the firefighters out, then we had the aerial trucks up. So you saw our aerial truck there, and one from Rama and one from Ramera. And then we start putting water in through the windows or down through the roof. Once the fire breaches the roof, then we can put water in through the roof, which is what we did for most of the call. And then we have bigger hose lines that we use to put water in through the windows and doors from the exterior to try to get into the middle of the building.
Obviously, you don't go to every call. When you do go to a call, what prompts you to go to the call, and what is the role of the fire chief at a call like this?
So when the senior officer, either myself or the deputy or both of us go, initially the first captain on scene will take command of the fire. So he's the one that's making the initial decisions. And then as it gets into a fire this size, then as one of the senior officers, so the deputy or I, would take over. And then that captain then becomes a supervisor of a crew of firefighters, and then we would start to make the tactical decisions and create a bit of an action, or create an action plan. And the tactical decisions are like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to fight the fire. This is where we're going to put people, call for help, all that. So that then becomes us. So as it escalates up in the severity level, that's when a fire chief or a deputy chief would take over as commander.
Obviously, you've been in the fire career a long time. I think it was 27 years.
Yep.
Obviously you've come up through the ranks. Have you ever been involved in a fire of this intense, this long, this many resources?
Not here in Orillia. Being on scene, this is probably the biggest building for us and the oldest that's burned. In the past, as you go back historically, in Orillia, we've had fires this big when, way back when the Opera House burned and the Tuttle building burned, and then the hardware store and Stills Hardware downtown. So there have been bigger fires like this, but in the last, I think it was before. Similar in length, before I got on Orillia, I was a volunteer in Severn. That's where I started as a volunteer. We came in to help Orillia when Switzer's lumberyard burned. And that was a prolonged incident over multiple days like this was. And then when I worked in Toronto as a firefighter, we had a lumberyard fire burn down there, which was a prolonged incident as well. But for me here in Orillia, in my 22 years here in Orillia, this has been the longest and the biggest fire that we've had.
Yeah, some of those things that you're mentioning were way before my time.
Yeah, that's right.
I've seen pictures and stuff, but
the Switzer's was the lumberyard and the tennis club on the same night.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
On the same night.
Same night. So it was those two were both arson fires.
Jeez. And
somebody lit the tennis club building on fire, and then came down the trail and then lit up the Switzer's. So, yeah, those were Switzer's. That was 3 days, I think, of that one as well. So, yeah.
Demolition too, or
it was all their outbuildings were on fire, and their main building was the whole yard was gone. Yeah.
Obviously, we all know that we had a call in, Rama, Ramera, Severn, or Menante.
Yep.
Do we train with those departments to help in these situations when we have to work together?
Right. So we do joint training throughout the year. We might not train with all the departments in 1 year, but over a few years we'll definitely train with the departments. So, and we work with them together on a regular basis on other calls as well. So we'll do. We respond to ice and water rescue calls with RAM and Ramera all the time. The three departments respond out together. When we have certain parts of the city that don't have fire hydrants. So when we have a fire call in an area where we don't have hydrants, then we have to call our neighbors in for their tankers. And then in this case with aerials, then if we need more than the aerial that we have, then we call in our neighbors as well. To help out. So we do train throughout the year with these departments on different situations.
Do you think down the line Orillia is going to be, with the amount of buildings we have, tall, high rises, up and coming buildings, do you think we would look at more apparatuses such as like another tower truck, or is that way out of the question?
Yeah, I think you'd have to look at how many calls we respond to that would need that. So right now, one aerial is good for Orillia, and if we need more, obviously in this case, and that's why we have the mutual aid agreements with the townships for their aerials to come in. It would depend on call volume and the types of calls and all that as to when another aerial would be required. But yeah, for us right now, one aerial is fine.
Looking at the overall situation, looking at everybody that was involved, community partners, outreach partners, fire guys, police, everything. If you had to say one thing to the group of them on the fire, how everyone controlled it, everything, what would that be?
So I think we'll kind of break it down into the partners. So having the mutual aid partners and the surrounding townships come in were very beneficial, and we thank them greatly for that, because we do, with the cold temperatures, we have to rotate the crews more too to kind of get warmed up and get some food and warm drink into them. So having those additional firefighters that came in from the townships, as well as their trucks, really helped us and our crews to rotate through, and even to the other city departments. So we had people there from EIS, from Environmental Services, and from the crews that looked after the fire hydrants. We had our fleet people there to fill up our fire trucks on scene, to fill up diesel, and to two of the aerials were frozen just from the water spraying back on them. So the city has a steamer unit, so they brought the steamer unit in to thaw out the aerials so we could retract them. So, other than outside of the fire departments, we also had all these other groups. And then you have the community groups and the customers. So the businesses. So the different restaurants, Eclectic, Rustica, Mariposa, Tops, they all brought food down for us and warm drinks. Salvation Army was there for 2 days to provide warm drinks and warm food for us. So really, without the big group effort of the city and kind of the Orillia spirit, it wouldn't have gone as well, that's for sure.